Hey Frag fam, Corbin here again from Northwest Scent. Well, I got tagged in another video. This one is called YouTube Made Me Do It. And basically the idea or concept of the video is fragrances that you purchased, whether it be a decant or a full bottle, because you saw another reviewer talk about it and it intrigued you enough to actually go out and purchase it. So I was tagged by Tyler from Simply Fragrances. So again, Tyler, thank you very much, my friend. Be sure to go check out his channel. I will link it down below. As far as people I'm tagging, I will have that link down below as well. I haven't 100% figured out who I'm tagging yet, but be sure to check the description and you will see who's been tagged down there. So if you guys are interested in hearing about the fragrances that I've picked up throughout my fragrance journey because of other reviewers, please stick around. But first, let's roll that intro. All right, welcome back. So for this list, I'm gonna be doing my top 5 fragrances that I picked up because of reviewers. And what do I mean by that? Well, basically, these are the top 5 fragrances that, in my opinion, just a reviewer did such a good job at describing it and they made it sound really, really nice that I just felt like I had to have a bottle and I went out and got it immediately. So I do have a lot more than 5 fragrances, of course, in my collection that I've picked up because of another reviewer. But again, these are the ones where they did such a good job at describing it. I went out and got a bottle right then and there. So with that description out of the way, we're gonna be diving straight into the number 5 spot. And starting the list off at the number 5 spot, this is a fragrance I picked up because of a review that Chris from Fragmental did. Coincidentally, Chris from Fragmental is also the person who started this video. He didn't start it as a tag video, but this was his video topic and it got turned into a tag video by another reviewer, and that's basically where the inspiration for this entire video came from. So shout out to you, Chris, for not only this fragrance, but also this tag video. Now the fragrance I'm talking about, it's from Roja Dove, and it is Enigma or Creation E. And dang guys, this is a really, really good fragrance. I am so happy I ended up picking this up. This was described in Chris's review as basically being like an oriental fragrance. He said it had this kind of like fizzy Coca-Cola vibe at the top, but that it was a lot more complex than that. He said it was just, you know, had this nice kind of boozy cognac, vanilla, benzoin in here, how there's like tobacco too, and it just had this nice bright oriental feel. Not only that, he brought on Roja Dove himself in the video to talk more about this fragrance and get really in depth. And then after watching Chris talk about it and then Roja Dove, I was like, I need that. So I went out and ended up picking it up, and I have not looked back since. This is a great, great fragrance. Definitely in my top 10 niche fragrances of all time. I included that in my niche list recently where I talked about my favorite niche fragrances, and you know, that is still true. Like, this is a great, great fragrance. Not only is it in my top 10 niche fragrances, this is my favorite Roja fragrance. And there's really nothing more to say that Chris didn't say in his review. It, you know, has this nice Coca-Cola feel at the top, but there's so much more depth to this fragrance than that. It doesn't just smell like soda. You know, it has this nice spicy, citrusy opening. There's pink pepper and black pepper in here with citruses at the top. Quickly, the citruses kind of diffuse and they open up more of this richer, deeper fragrance. You know, it has that cognac, that vanilla, that benzoin. There's tobacco too. It's a really nice mellow tobacco. It's not harsh or smoky. You know, there's so much depth to this fragrance, and it really is mysterious. And I totally get what Roja was saying about the idea of this fragrance. You know, just a great fragrance concept and one you guys really, really need to try. So again, at the number 5 spot, the fragrance I picked up because of Chris from Fragmental, that was Roja Dove's Creation E or Enigma. Next on the list, now this is a fragrance that was brought to me by one of my favorite reviewers and my man, Ross from tltg Reviews. Now he talked about this house in general, not necessarily just this fragrance, really the first reviewer that I saw talking about them. And it wasn't any one review or video that intrigued me enough to get this, but after a while of seeing just like the repetition of this showing up, it just like dawned on me. I was like, that's something I really need, and I went out and got it. So this fragrance is from Kajal, and it is Kajal Homme. And this is a really good DNA as well. I always say in the videos that I mention this that don't look at the bottle and think this is gonna be a dark, heavy, wintry fragrance, because this is not. It definitely does have some depth to it, and I wouldn't call it a freshie by any means, but this isn't dark and dank and like overly sweet. I like to compare this to something like Chanel's Allure Homme Sport. This has the mandarin orange in it, has the musk, it has the tonka bean, all of which is in Chanel's Allure Homme Sport as well as the Eau Extreme version. However, there is more to this one than that. This is actually a more complex fragrance than that one, and you would hope so because this is a niche fragrance and it costs a lot more. So with this one, and you can kind of tell from the juice color, you have some dark oud in here, and it's not like a heavy oud, but it does come across natural, and it just adds this light kind of like dark woodiness to it. Really nice kind of mature backbone to the Chanel Allure Homme Sport style of DNA. Again, this is not a clone fragrance. I wouldn't even call this inspired by. It just happens to smell somewhat similar to that fragrance. So overall, I'm really glad that Ross from tltg Reviews talked about this fragrance. I wouldn't have known anything about this house if it wasn't for him. And because of him, I have this fragrance in my collection and I'm happy to have it. Next on the list, this fragrance was brought to me by none other than Jeremy Fragrance himself. And no, it's not L'Ennemi de l'Homme. While he has talked about that fragrance a lot, of course, and he said it was his favorite fragrance in his collection at one point. A lot of other reviewers talk about that fragrance as well. This is one that I've honestly only seen him talk about it. I'm sure it is in other reviewers' videos, but I just haven't seen them. This is the only reviewer, again, that I've seen mention this fragrance. And honestly, he did a pretty good job at describing it, and it made me just want to go out and buy a bottle, so that's what I did. This one is from Bottega Veneta, and it is Pour Homme Extreme. So this was in a video that he did, I think it was called Top 10 Most Manly Fragrances or something like that. Just like masculine fragrances basically. And the way he described this one, he said it was very woody, it had like this leathery touch to it and just smelled like a man. I think he said it smells like something Dan Bilzerian would wear or something silly like that. That wasn't the reason I wanted to get this fragrance. It was just the woodiness that he described and like the leathery touch. I really like woody fragrances, and I've talked about that on this channel before. I like leather as well, so it sounded like a really good combo to me. So I went out and bought a bottle, and I was very surprised. It is a very, very nice fragrance. Doesn't have the best longevity in the world, which is kind of unfortunate, but this opening is freaking amazing. This opens up with pine tree and juniper berries. It's really green, has this kind of like just herbal quality to it in a way, but not medicinal or anything like that. It's just fresh and green. There's fir tree in here as well. There is a little bit of spiciness from some nutmeg, but more so, again, it just focuses on that woodiness and that green touch. In the base, you do get that leather as well. It turns almost into like this creamy leather. It's not harsh or animalic or anything like that. And this fragrance really does soften up as it dries down. So it is a very nice masculine fragrance. One, if you guys are looking for something that is just clean and easy to wear, yet very masculine, this is a great one. And it just smells like a well put together gentleman. So at the number 3 spot, again, recommended by Jeremy Fragrance, that was Bottega Veneta Pour Homme Extreme. At the number 2 spot, I have a fragrance that I picked up because of Justin Copeland from Stay Fresh Productions. You know, Justin, shout out to you, man. He's a great guy, one of my favorite reviewers. We've done a collab before, and he's just a great, honest guy, and I really do trust his opinion. Now, this is a fragrance he talked about in a review, I think it was about 11 months ago, or maybe a year at this point, but he's been talking about it a lot more recently. Finally, I decided, you know, it was something I needed. Just the way he described it, it sounded amazing. And he even had an interview with the owner and perfumer of this brand. So that just kind of just was like the icing on the cake. The way it was just talked about and described, the quality of not just the fragrance itself, but the bottle, I knew I needed it. This is Argos, and it is Triumph of Bacchus. I guess I should have said this is from Argos, but anyway, so this fragrance, it's a damn good fragrance. It is a tobacco fragrance, but it's not like heavy on the tobacco. When you first spray it on, that's not necessarily the first thing you're gonna pick up. Personally, for me, what I get from the opening is the peach, and it is a very photorealistic peach. It smells like they've actually juiced a peach and dumped it into this bottle along with all the other ingredients. You know, it smells that high quality to me. Not synthetic at all. I'm sure there are some synthetics in here, but I'm just saying the quality smells very natural, has decent performance as well. And like I said, this is a nice tobacco fragrance. So dominant peach note, the tobacco is there kind of underneath and it is detectable, but you do get this paired kind of with this patchouli vanilla combo. I think there's some saffron in here, and it kind of almost gives you a Mancera red tobacco vibe. I wouldn't quite say they're redundant, but personally, I don't feel the need to purchase red tobacco now that I own this fragrance right here. It's similar enough for me. I think this is just a far superior fragrance. It doesn't have that harshness in the opening. The opening on this is extremely smooth because of that nice, rich peach note, and this is just a banger of a fragrance. Something that's better for the cooler weather rather than the warmer weather. So I'm not gonna get quite as much wear out of this going forward, at least for, you know, the next 5 or 6 months, but I can't wait to start wearing it more and more because this is that good. So again, Justin, thank you for recommending this fragrance. I'm really glad I picked this one up. And that was Triumph of Bacchus from Argos. And finally, at the #1 spot, this is a fragrance that I picked up because of Ashton from Gent Sense. He's a reviewer I've been watching for a long time. I think he was honestly the first reviewer that I really started watching, and he's just somebody's opinion that I really trust. He's a great guy, and this is a fragrance that he talked about a year ago, maybe a little bit longer, but I think it was about a year ago when I ended up picking this up. He just had it in a few videos, and the way he described it just sounded really interesting to me. At that time, my collection wasn't nearly as big, of course, so this was something that was unique to my collection, and when I finally ended up picking it up, this was something that I didn't have anything else like it, so I was really glad I had it. This is from Memo Paris, and it is African Leather. And this is another one of my favorite niche fragrances. This is something that is in my top 10. It was in my top 10 niche fragrances, or my top 10 current favorite niche fragrances video that I put out. This thing is just such a good leather fragrance. Like I said, this really does focus around the note of leather. It's not a light, kind of taking a backseat leather fragrance. It is front and center. It is paired with cardamom. There's cumin, saffron, and oud in this fragrance, along with some other notes, but those 5 are the most dominant to me. The cumin here adds this very Eastern feeling kind of spiciness. It doesn't give off that weird BO smell that some people talk about. Honestly, if you don't like cumin, this is one that you still might enjoy, although I would get a sample first, of course, just to be safe. But to me, the cumin here is really nice. The saffron, it isn't an overly sweet or floral saffron. It's just kind of there with adding a little bit of spiciness, not too much of that cherried sweetness. For me, the cardamom and the leather are really what makes this fragrance shine. The cardamom puts this thing in date night territory, adds this nice, rich spiciness that makes it very seductive. The leather here is more of like an old, worn leather, not a clean new car leather, but I really dig that aspect of it. The oud here, it's not skanky at all. I don't get anything fecal with this fragrance. It's just kind of a dark woodiness in a way. So a nice, spicy, woody, sweet leather fragrance. Nothing else out there smells like African leather. So one you guys really need to check out, and I'm really glad I have this in my collection. So again, I got this one because of Ashton from Gent Sense. That was Memo Paris African Leather. Well, there you guys go. Those are my top 5 fragrances that I've picked up because of other YouTube reviewers. I kind of want to get a discussion going, so I'm really curious, what are some fragrances that you guys have picked up because of YouTube? Fragrances that you really enjoy and you wouldn't have in your collection if you didn't watch other YouTube reviewers. If you guys enjoyed this video, I would really appreciate dropping a like just to show your support, and then that way more people can see my videos on YouTube. Additionally, if you want to write that comment or just let me know any other thoughts, as well as maybe some new video ideas or topics, that would be great too. And since you're down there doing all that stuff, if you have not already, if you could hit the subscribe button and then the bell notification, that would be amazing. That way you stay up to date on new videos whenever they get released going forward. But with all that out of the way, that's all I really have for you guys today. So I hope you have a good one. Stay healthy, stay wealthy, and smell great.